Welcome to Leadership Rediscovered, presented by Shine Consulting. I'm your host, Laura Siebold. Today, I am so excited to be joined by my great friend and former boss 3 times over, Beth Pratt. Thanks for being here, Beth.
Thanks, Laura. And I think it's interesting in your intro, you don't mention the fact that the first time I asked you to come work with me, you said no. So I'm not bitter, and we're still really good friends, and you were a great colleague. So thank you.
Thanks. Glad you gave me a second chance because
Sure.
I definitely thought I burned that bridge. So super glad I didn't. All right. So a graduate of California University of Pennsylvania with a Bachelor of Science in Management Information Systems and a Master of Business Administration from West Virginia University, Beth is a senior HR leader with a proven track record of translating talent and human capital decisions into positive profit and loss impact. Starting her HR career at West Virginia University Hospitals, where she built the in-house physician recruitment program, focused on recruiting fellowship-trained physicians to the WVU Medical School in Morgantown, West Virginia. Beth then transitioned to Morgantown-based Mylan NV, a publicly traded generic pharmaceutical manufacturer. Over the next 15 years, she expanded her experience as the company grew significantly through a combination of complex mergers and acquisitions. During her tenure, she served in various HR roles, including the Global Senior Vice President of HR, as the company grew to $5 billion in revenue, $16 billion in market cap, and had over 38,000 employees based in over 70 countries. Beth has extensive experience in culture renovation, organizational development, succession planning, employer brand and engagement, and strategic workforce planning. And I'm just going to add one sentence. She is simply fabulous. All right. With that addition, Beth is currently the Chief People Officer at the much buzzed about Mountaintop Beverage in Morgantown, West Virginia. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Yes, thank you so much. And I know that we are here to talk about leadership, but Mountaintop Beverage has generated a ton of interest. So if you wouldn't mind, could you just tell us really quickly what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because we were in Charleston this week and someone in the hallway said that Mountaintop Beverage has been the worst kept secret in Morgantown. So very quickly, we are going to announce sometime this summer, we are an aseptic beverage manufacturing facility that is coming to Morgantown. We are building a facility in the Westover Industrial Park, and we are looking to start out by the end of the year about 125 employees with the intention to growing to about 350 to 400 once the expansions take place. So it's really exciting working with some really interesting founders that have got about 80 years of experience in food and beverage, and very specifically lots of innovation in this aseptic area where you can basically bring plant-based products and products that typically need refrigerated and no longer have to do that, but because of the way you package. So the innovation that's coming here from Europe is going to be really exciting. I'm hoping that potentially in the fall, you could get some of our founders on here talking about their experiences in building in leadership as it relates to startups, because it's very different. It's really cool.
Okay, Beth's throwing it out there. So we'll be coming after your senior leaders. Okay, put in a good word for me if you don't mind.
I'll do my best.
Okay, that would be awesome. Thank you. It is really exciting for not only North Central West Virginia, but the entire state of West Virginia. So everybody follow Mountaintop.
And the region too. You know, the region, everything.
Absolutely.
It's much more than just a bottling or a co-manufacturing facility. It's going to do a lot for the state and the dairy farms. It's going to do a lot for agriculture in the regions and the state. So I think everyone's really excited.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, now on with the show. We will talk about leadership from here on out. So I know personally and firsthand that you've had a very successful career in HR, but you did not start in HR. So I'd like for you just to take me through your career journey, more specifically your leadership journey, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's interesting that you bring up, because I think it's probably one of the unique things that I bring to the HR function. I am not traditionally trained in HR. I have a MIS degree, which is Management Information Systems, and the first 11 years of my career, I was in information technology. why that's important in my mind as it relates to leadership is I was eventually in leadership positions within IT, managing people who I could not actually step in and do their job. So I go to very quickly to, they were so much more smarter than me. There's no way I could just jump in and do their job. So if you think about managing programmers, and in different languages, as a leader, you don't necessarily have the ability to learn all those different languages. I did that job for a while. What I realized doing that job is what it taught me from a leadership perspective is to trust people and to really start to do. I became one of those people that, how can I help? Because I can't do everything. I can't do what you're doing. How can I help you? And I really started to focus on breaking down barriers. I had a big career shift. My career shift was interesting. And I talk to students a lot about this, is how do you match your passion with really what your job is at some point, because it does matter. Yes. So I use this analogy all the time. I spent a lot of energy being decent in IT, and some would even say I sucked at it. If I'm being honest, a lot of energy. And when I realized that I don't necessarily know if this is actually the path that I want to take, I saw some things that were opening up at the hospital at the time. I went to the president of the hospital and said, hey, listen, you're going to be, you're trying to bring in this physician recruitment office in-house. Why can I try it? And I remember I got all kinds of advice. Career suicide. Why would you do this? Technology is hot. Everybody wants to be in technology. And, the people aspect of things, really, how hot can that eventually be? How interesting? And I have never looked back. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because it matched my personality, and it really matched my interest in people. At the end of the day. And I tell you that because that also is kind of the way that I think about from a leadership perspective. So when I was officially a leader, I had people reporting in to me. In some cases, I knew what they could do, or I could do their job, and in other cases, I couldn't. But at the end of the day, what I started to realize is leadership is about connection, right? How can you start to connect with people? And in the early career, I didn't realize the importance of how deep that connection goes. Like, you really start to have to get to know your people very, very intimately, understanding, everything about them, not just their professional portion of their business, of their, personalities, but everything about them. Because at the end of the day, it's about bringing people to the table that can do the best job. Yes. I have had a lot of different types of leadership over my career. At one point, I was managing about 350 HR professionals around the world. Wow. What an opportunity that was. I use this, I tell this story all the time because it's kind of funny. But more importantly, it's about how people bet. Companies bet on you. Your bosses bet on you. I got a call from our corporate headquarters when I was at Mylan from the head of HR. We were just starting to build this global HR function. And he said, Beth, why don't you come up here and take the talent, it was the talent management job for the globe. And I said, well, okay. And then I sat there for a minute and I said, well, wait a second, do I have to have a passport? I did not even have a passport.
For a global job.
When I took my first global job. And he was really funny. He paused and he always giggled and he said, we might want to get you one. So I had not traveled internationally, never in a million years thought I even wanted to travel internationally. And after that, what an opportunity. So when you think about, I never in a million years thought I'd be managing a global workforce. But when you start to think about and unpack how that I had no business doing the job, first off, if truth be told. But once I got the opportunity to do it, to really start to understand, the differences in cultures, the differences in languages, like words mattering, like what you say in one, even in the US, what you say means different things. Can you imagine the multiplier of that when you're doing it in different countries? So I, even though COVID in the last 2 or 3 years have gotten us really interested in technology and how it could work, I was using that. I felt the need for technology probably 10 years ago, because sometimes the language barrier was hard, not just being on the phone talking to someone, but really understanding them, seeing their nonverbals, really getting to know them more and more. And so, I had an individual that I worked with was a direct report from me in another country. And I had a really hard time, almost to the point that, I don't know if I can have this conversation, kind of a little bit avoiding it, not because I didn't feel like I understood enough. And so I made a conscientious effort to start meeting with this individual once a week on video, and really, and friends to this day. Love the individual, know about his family, know about everything from, his professional aspirations to his personal aspirations. And we still keep in touch. And I really believe it's because of the technology and utilizing just that video. I'm a visual learner, and just watching that was really interesting to me.
That's cool. And it's kind of funny because you just beautifully brought in your initial career in technology and adapted it to,
absolutely,
here's how I leverage technology as an HR leader. And really, you were doing that before it was popular to do
exactly.
it. Now
it was
much
very
more common.
Expensive. And I remember
sure.
all the equipment around us was so expensive. And we were blessed with the opportunity to do that a lot earlier on. Now things are a lot easier.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'd like to go a little bit deeper into that experience when you said you were managing over 300 people around the world, because there's a lot of complexity in that. So how did you, outside of, the technology piece, what are some other, strategies or tips or tools that you have maybe for people who are in that situation? I mean, what was that experience like for you trying to manage a workforce that the majority of those people you were not physically co-located with? Because everyone's dealing with that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the first thing that was, again, I was in the perfect place at the perfect time, was we were putting in a lot of, let's call them, processes and procedures across the globe. So we were trying to standardize. What that required me to do as a leader in that space is to travel and to really boots on the ground in those locations and getting an understanding. Like, you can describe what a facility looks like in India from, 9,000 miles away. But until you're in that facility and seeing what the people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, you can't expect to have the empathy that I didn't have the ability to empathize when I'm hearing situations because I wasn't seeing it. So again, visual learner, I liked being boots on the ground. So I had an opportunity to travel a lot in my early career in global to actually really experience what people are going through. And it takes a lot of listening, right? There is it's common. It's human nature to go in there with a perceived notion of what you think somebody needs. And there, unfortunately, sometimes it comes across as arrogance. Sometimes it comes across as you're the smartest person in the room. But trying to be very deliberate to not allow that to happen takes a lot of discipline. And even if you're hearing something that you're like, okay, well, we fixed that 10 years ago, you've got to understand that people are at different places and really start to meet them where they're at. And so I really tried my best to kind of sit back, observe, actively listen to what people were saying, and then looking for solutions, not just making things globalized for the sake of globalization, because in our mind, we think that's about simplicity, but it's not. It really isn't. If you globalize for the sense of globalization and you create additional issues locally, you're not solving any problems. So really focusing on, it's about root cause analysis of what the problems on the ground are and figuring out creative solutions to make sure that you can handle them.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about, first of all, it's very clear that you care about the people that have reported to you. And I'm certainly someone who got the benefit of that. So I know, again, firsthand it's true. But sometimes I tell people, and I don't think they like to hear it, but if you don't care about people or have their well-being or best interests at heart, leadership might not be the right place for you. And I think some people take offense to that, but caring about people, empathizing, listening, which I think was probably, sometimes that can be hard if you are in the top job of whatever the function is that you're, and you were. And, sometimes people expect you to have all the answers or to just come in and say, this is what we're doing. So I have a lot of respect for the fact that you didn't do that you took a step back and said, let me listen, let me learn what the problems are, and then figure out how we can work more collaboratively to solve them.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. So you're in this big, huge global job with all these people around the world. And now you're at a startup, which is a massive change, right? So tell me about that change.
Yeah,
and then
sure.
How potentially have you had to adapt your leadership style based on that as well?
Yeah. So I'm one of those individuals. I have not had a lot of different job shifts, put it this way, company shifts over the years. Like I'm somebody that, I don't know, I stick.
Loyal.
I wouldn't even say, I don't want to say I'm loyal or sound self-righteous or anything like this, but I really fall in love with the people that I'm working with.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's not about looking for the next job or the bigger opportunity. It's like, how do I leave my people? Like I have people in these companies that I'm still friends with today, and it's so difficult for me to think about leaving the people. But I do believe at some point, you've got to make the decision as, are you contributing? Are you still in a position to impact? And at what point does that impact, there is a diminishing return on that impact. And so you've got to make that uncomfortable choice of stepping out of your comfort zone and doing something different. So I started talking to, I was always interested in the startup space to the point in my career and my life in general that, maybe let's take a little bit of a risk and try to do something different. And to tell you the truth, I've always liked building. I'm more of an operational. I don't necessarily. I can do the strategic work, but I'm not really good at sitting in a room thinking big thoughts all day long. Like I think to myself, what am I accomplishing? And I've always been like, okay, let's accomplish something.
Let's do some things.
Yeah. So what I like about moving into this new leadership role with a startup is you are doing everything. I mean, we're emptying the trash cans during the day, and we're washing the dishes, and we're working on the culture and like what do we want this company to be, as well as trying to get people paid. I was laughing. They're like, okay, you're in charge of payroll, and I'm like, really? I mean, all of the years I worked, there were people that we were magically paid every day or every 2 weeks, and I didn't have to do that. I have to do that now. That's a lot of pressure. And so
that is a lot of pressure.
I have these moments when they ask me to do something, I'll look at them and say, "What? I didn't sign up for this. What? Aren't there people that do that?" So when we have 15 employees right now.
Wow.
So it's really jumping in and doing everything. And I keep thinking to myself, if I have the ability to do it right this time, like everything that I've learned over the years, like it's a great way to step back. Now you have a little bit more experience that you can say, okay, you're going to make this decision today and it's going to impact you badly a couple years from now. And let me tell you why. And even if I intuitively might have known decisions that we were making, I wasn't able to articulate them with the exact examples of how that's going to happen. Yeah. So I feel like I have a little bit more, I'm just a little bit older, a little bit wiser, just a little bit.
You don't look it.
Yeah, whatever. Says a good friend of mine.
Not biased at all. No, but I mean, I do think it helps to be able to have the benefit of wisdom and being able to say, you know what, I've seen this movie play out before, or I've been in a similar situation. So you can apply the experience of being in an established company, but still you have the learning agility to, not just say, well, here's how we did it at these organizations
That's right.
I worked at.
That's right.
Let's
Which
just
is
apply.
not the right answer. And we all know that. Every leadership book tells you. Yeah. But it is so easy to fall back on your laurels, like in sense, okay, well, I did it this way. I'm going to do it this way again. Mm-hmm. And if you're not challenging yourself and others around you, it eventually happens. And you're like, wait a second, how did we get back to the same place?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just fascinating. Yeah. So you just talked about leadership books, which I'm passionate about the fact that there are so many leadership books, which I've read many, not all, but many of them. And one of the things that I think often about is that there's really no single right definition of leadership. So I would love to hear, what is Beth Pratt's definition of leadership?
My definition of leadership. Okay. On the surface, this is going to sound really shallow, but if you give me a minute to kind of deep dive in it, it's about, in my mind, it's about grace and elegance. And I know people think about, oh, well, that's about, how you show up, if you, how you move, if you're, I don't know. It's just a little bit about royalty in my mind. The reality of it is why I go there is, let me just break it down. First off, I talk about grace. And grace, from my perspective, God has given us all the ability to be kind to each other. And I think over the years, I sometimes have lost that or put it on the back burner because you're dealing with a situation. You've got a lot of things that, tasks that you've got to get done, and you lose your patience and you lose your kindness. And I think that especially, think about everything that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years with COVID, kindness is so front and center to me. And I cannot look at it as a potential weakness because someone is too kind.
Kindness is not weakness.
Oh my gosh, no, not at all. Isn't that Rihanna that says that? That's one of those Rihanna
know, I thought it was
songs.
me. No, I'm just kidding.
It was Rihanna too.
We'll give Rihanna credit for that.
Yeah. So first off, the grace piece is about kindness to me, and I think you've got to have it. I like working for people that are kind, and I like, being in my values and being kind to people as much as I possibly can. The second piece is grace, and from my perspective, grace is much more about being more than being fashionable. Elegance.
Yeah.
Elegance is much more about being fashionable. Yeah. It's about being original. And I have to say, over the years, as I did deeper dive and deeper, spend a lot of time looking at diversity, inclusion, and belonging, I am fascinated. Diversity are the numbers, but the inclusiveness and belongingness is big to me. And being original, feeling comfortable with being who you are. I have done so many times. Being in HR, you get an opportunity to coach and mentor and, give advice. And so many times I have given advice to people about how they can survive versus really forcing them to thrive as themselves. Because there's always that risk. If I encourage you to be you, and you eventually get fired for it or terminate it because of it, the amount of guilt that you hold. Yeah. But at the end of the day, even if you lose that job, isn't it best for you to kind of show up as your whole self and original? So it's about originality in my mind. That's what elegance is. And it's about simplicity. Like, no, I don't want to play games. I just want to be forward. I want to work for the greater good. And I want people around me that do that, just that. And, that's leadership to me, grace and elegance. And from my perspective, here's what I'm good at as it relates to leadership. I am really good at hiring. I'm really good at getting talent around me that is smarter, that is wiser, that I know you've always said it. Yeah. Oh yeah, you were too. But I've always said this a million times. People will never remember me, but they will remember the talent that I bring to the organization because I have seen people just thrive, and just rock stars that we've hired in different companies that are still there today, that are doing great. And I hope that as I continue to evolve as a leader, which of course that's evolving, you never exactly who you were. I'm definitely not who I was, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I hope that I really focus on letting that person be who they are, and then figuring out how to help them, thrive where they are from a culture perspective.
Yeah. And one of the things that I have always admired about you is that you are authentic. You're real. And I appreciate that and respect that about you. And I agree with you. I think I could probably write a book on how to become a chameleon, how to conform, how to fit in, how to survive an environment. And I've learned a lot from that more recently. What advice would you give to someone who feels pressure to conform or is in an organization that maybe is not a great fit or a good match? I mean, what would you tell someone like that now, having the wisdom of where you sit today?
Well, it's easy. It's easy to say, leave.
Yeah.
Leave. It's easy to say that. That takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of risk. And some people aren't in the situation to do that immediately just because of where their personal career is right now. So what I would say to them is don't lose yourself, survive until you can leave. Like almost start to say, okay, what's your end goal? Like everybody talks about goals and objectives and all that kind of stuff. Really stick it. Like, what is your end goal and how do you get there? And these are the things you've got to do to get there, and make sure, you hold yourself accountable. Because I don't think that, forcing, a square peg into a round hole is ever going to work. Eventually you could survive. Like, I feel like I could stay in some companies that I've been for the rest of my career. But, from my value perspective, I want to contribute. I'm not somebody that, listen, I played sports my entire, high school and, childhood. I don't want to sit the bench.
No.
I want to be in the game. You know what I mean? I don't even have to be good at it, but I just want to be on it, participating. And when I start to feel like there's no sitting the bench for me, and so then I'm not contributing, and what real impact, what's the legacy, right? Yeah. So then you've got to force yourself to do something new.
Yeah. And that's so true, because I love that you said it's kind of like leave, but be smart about it. Right. Recognize you might not be able to just walk out the door. I mean, I remember I had a moment in my career where it was a bad day. And I said, if this person yells at me one more time, I'm going to put my badge down and I'm walking out the door. I didn't have a job. I mean, that would have been ridiculous. And I'm glad I calmed down and didn't make an emotional decision. But yeah, be smart because think about what you are giving up when you're just trying to survive, as opposed to searching out the right environment for you where you can thrive. Yeah. So I think that's good. Yeah.
I say to Aiden, my son is Aiden, he's 19 now. And I feel like I've been like coaching him over the years. And I always say to him, why are you living an ordinary life when you were meant to be extraordinary?
Yes.
And that can mean so many different things. Go do something extraordinary. Of course, he rolls his eyes or he hangs up on me,
Yeah, because he's 19.
I feel like he's done that his entire life. But, I'm just going to keep saying it because we are all meant to be extraordinary. We just have to kind of find our way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You're speaking my language here, Beth Pratt. I love it. All right. So speaking of being extraordinary, I mean, I think, again, you've been exposed to so many leaders over your career. That is one of the unique things about being in HR, especially leading a global HR function, is that you just interact with so many different leaders on a regular basis. So I would love to hear any patterns that you saw in terms of leaders who, tended to fail in an organization, or, the more positive side of that, leaders who were successful, especially in their leadership style. Any patterns or things you noted?
Here's what I would say. Let me start on the positive side. I really have learned to appreciate the honest critic. And that's tough. Now, that's my style because, when you have a personality and you're an extrovert, you have the ability to kind of connect with people and build strong relationships, and dare I say friendships. People are always they try to be nice to you, and you appreciate that. I appreciate people being nice to me, but then I also don't feel like, when I'm doing something that needs to be criticized, people sometimes don't have the guts to say it. And I've done the same thing. We have talked about the writer Kim Scott and her idea around radical candor. That book changed my life because what she was able to teach me as a leader, and I've had leaders that have done this, they might not have been my favorite leaders because they were tough, right? But at the end of the day, they made me better. So a leader that makes me better, and I watch leaders that make other people better, I have a real admiration for them. And this whole idea around radical candor is about you've got to be straight with people. And in order to do that, if you're somebody that likes to be, nice all the time, you're not helping that person. So if you can convince that individual that I'm going to give you it all because I care about you and I want you to be successful. And here's my criticism, and here's why I think this. But I'm only telling you this not because I want to cut you down, because I've had leaders that just want to cut you down. And over the years, you figure it out. Yeah. Sometimes you didn't even realize it was happening, but sometimes they were threatened, or sometimes they were just, a little bit of jealousy. But at the end of the day, if they're doing it because they want me to succeed, that's a whole different feeling. And so I am really going to challenge myself moving forward to be the honest critic and give people radical candor. Not because I want to criticize anyone, because it doesn't feel good in my value system, doesn't feel good cutting other people down. But if I'm doing it because I want them to know that this is happening, because I want them to thrive, it's a different feeling. And if you can deliver that message, and I've had leaders that have been able to deliver that message to me in the past, those are the people I respect.
Yeah. And I think I have struggled with that as well, because I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I care about people. I love people. But at the same time, I think I heard something at one point where it was said, if you're holding back on giving someone feedback that they need to hear in order for them to get better, who are you really protecting here? I mean, You're not doing what's best for them. You don't want to hurt their feelings, but you're not doing what's best for them if you're not giving them the feedback that they need in order to grow and get better. And I think for me, I've kind of learned how to shape it a little bit differently in my mind around being aware of the goals that person has and what they're trying to get towards or go to, and then being able to point out feedback on, hey, here's some things that I'm observing or seeing that can help you be more successful in what you're going after. And then it feels like a more caring conversation less about, let me just be cruel or give you tough feedback or, kick you when you're down.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Yeah. So on the note, or on the topic of successes and failures, as you reflect on your own career as a leader, any redo moments, if there's things that you could go back and change now, with the beauty of hindsight being 2020, what would you change, if anything? I would change
so many things. But Brene Brown, another one of our common, she talks about regret and how, in some of her latest podcasts, she talks about how can regret, everybody says, live life with no regrets. No regrets. Regrets are vulnerability. Regrets are learning. And so hold on to those regrets. What would you have done differently? Yeah. So I hold on to regrets. I would do a lot of things differently. From a leadership perspective, I worry about being too kind in situations where, I've lost people and I've convinced myself, we lie to ourselves. I tell my family this all the time. The worst lies are the ones we tell ourselves, right? To get up every day.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I've lied to myself and said, well, it was their fault. But if you look in the mirror as that leader and say, what could I have done differently to make that person successful? There are people I'd love to go back and apologize for. You and I laugh about the Beth Pratt lost years when she's like, you were like, I don't see you for years.
Beth Pratt was a really big deal, and I was not in the organization, so I lost her a little.
That's not true, but the lost years are something that I think back. I was so focused on the task at hand that I missed the connection, and I get mad at myself because that probably during that time you have the most ability to be influential because you were in the middle of everything. And did I utilize that influence enough to impact the people around me? And I think the answer was no. So those are some of the things that, getting too connected to the task and missing the connection of the people, that's what I'd do differently. And I'm not doing it again.
No, I believe it. And we still stayed connected.
Exactly. I think I love when even when we worked together, when I'd call, can you talk? No, I can't talk. And I'd say, I hate your job. Yeah. And then you'd call, can you talk? No, I hate your job. That was always our answer. And we were like kind of making the job together. And we hated each other's job.
We got through it. We
did.
I'd love to hear from you. Any leadership quotes or mantras or things that you stand by, especially now as you continue to evolve in your leadership journey and your leadership definition?
Oh, that's a great one. I mean, I think about some of the funny things I've said over the years that probably weren't appropriate, that aren't very inspirational. I mean, I used to always joke with my team when we were heading to the boardroom. And at the end of the day, we have worked incredibly hard. Yeah. hard as we possibly could on a topic or a presentation or, some type of sales pitch. And we're getting ready at the end of the night and they're like, okay, are we ready for tomorrow? And I'm like, okay, just all you can do tomorrow is wear a fabulous outfit. And I know, again, that sounds very shallow, but it's the only thing that I could control. And so I thought to myself, if I'm going to get my butt kicked in the boardroom, I am going to look good. Yep. I'm going to have a great outfit on. And at the end of the day, it's about showing up, right? Showing up with some type of, okay, we can do this. We could do this. And no matter what the outcome is, we're better because of all the preparation.
Yes.
And one of the things I've always talked about is preparation makes you fearless. So if you're going into a situation that you've got a lot of, nerves about, and the only thing you can do is prepare.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the biggest message from my perspective is making sure you're prepared. And if not, make sure you have a good outfit on, because at the end of the day, you're going to get kicked.
That was my golfing strategy, because I'm not very good at golfing, but I wore really fabulous golfing outfits, hoping to distract people from my actual golf game. So, hey, whatever works. Well, I wrote a few of your mantras down. Yeah, get ready. These are good. You teach people how to treat you. People don't leave companies. They leave people.
Yeah.
And the last one, because there's many that I can't share, but when you don't have anything nice to say, look at your fingernails.
That's my mom and my sister.
So now the secret's out. If you see us looking at our nails, which we did spend
my mother
a good bit of time.
Always tell us that, and my sister and I, to this day, when
Looking
something's
at our
going on in our
nails.
family, we'll just go like this.
So there are many more, but those
That's
are
awesome.
some of the ones that I wrote down. So I think about, I had Jim Matuga on Leadership Rediscovered, and he said something about a lot of leadership is caught, not taught.
I love that. I heard that.
I love that too. And so for me, I think, especially as I think about people who are just starting out as leaders, maybe they have a team for the first time of direct reports, and maybe they haven't been taught much, or what they have been taught is, what not to do as opposed to what to do. I mean, what advice would you give other leaders about how to show up in the best way that they can as a leader, especially if they don't really have much formal training or education on what it means to be a leader?
That's a great question. And I think about, like I said, leadership is so different to everyone else. I think, first of all, making sure you understand what's important to you as a leader. And then really, when you see it in other people, bring it up, bring it to the forefront. Don't worry about shining. Shining the light on someone else. Because at the end of the day, everyone brings something to the table. I've seen the other thing that I talk about, and I've done this in my career too, and sometimes I think it was perceived as a weakness based on some of the results, but I have this idea about leading from behind. And I go back to, or beside, right? I go back to my years as when I couldn't necessarily do the job that the people that were reporting me could do, because they were just fabulous and a lot smarter. Sometimes I had to step back and let them shine. And I think I got comfortable in my own skin with that. And whether, the boss's boss thinks that that's a sign of weakness or strength, it doesn't matter to me anymore, because I know it's a sign of strength. So when I was working on technically exclusive things, and I knew I had technical experts that report to me, I pushed them out as far as I could. And it wasn't standing behind them because I want it protected. It was because this is going to be their opportunity to shine. And at the end of the day, it was for the greater good. It was best for the company, and I have sometimes you got to walk behind, sometimes you got to walk right next to them. If you've got somebody that's not necessarily, they've got it in them, but they can't necessarily, they don't know for themselves, you stand right beside them. You hold their hand if you have to. And so I think that's probably, and it's interesting, leadership shows up in so many different places. I have to tell this story about my son because this happened years ago, and I actually wrote an article about it. He was young playing baseball, and we were in a tournament. And it was a 3-day tournament at my husband and my hometown. And we were somewhat athletic. I like to think I was, at least. And my son, I watched him over all these games. He kept striking out and striking out and striking out. He struck out 15 times that weekend.
That's painful.
Oh, it was painful. And he always laughs. He's like, I did not. I'm like, I know you did. And we stood out with our heads on the fence in the back outfield thinking, oh my gosh, who's watching us, right? And the last ball that was hit was the championship game, and it was my son. We were winning by 9. And anybody that understands baseball, there's a mercy rule. If you win by 10, you win the game. We were winning by 9. And Aiden hit the ball. There was someone on third. He hit it to the outfield. He got to first base, and he scored. Or the kid on third base scored. And all of a sudden, they won the game. Well, all his team came out and picked him up and was carrying him around the field. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, but the entire time when this kid was striking out, which was the fascinating part, he would go back to the dugout, get a piece of gum, put his hat on, that would be it. My kid never cried about, a terrible performance. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, is he going to be motivated? Is he going to be successful? And like his buddy would get upset. He was the first one, got his arm around him. His one friend scored a touchdown, listen to me, a home run. I'm messed up. A home run. And he ran out and hugged him first and stuff like that. So they're carrying him around, right? And it was funny because he came running up to me and he needed money for the concession stand. And he said, Mom, hey, they didn't pick me up because I hit the ball. They picked me up because I won the game.
I love that.
And I went to correct him, okay. And he ran away. And I thought to myself, now here's a kid, not the best player on the team. Mm-hmm. But he recognized when people were, struggling. Mm-hmm. He always had a good attitude about it. And he just wanted to be a part. And I think to myself, I kind of just want to be a part. Yeah. And wherever you're going to need me, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, it's all about contributing. Yeah. And if you're the leader, you don't always have to be the one to contribute. And I think that is such important advice, especially for younger leaders, because it's a very insecure feeling. And there's a lot of, I have to make sure I do this right and that right. And I have to, bring a very authoritative presence. But it is sometimes about, well, how can you contribute in your best way, as well as you think about the different individuals on your team and how can they best contribute. I do have to brag on you for a minute, and I wasn't planning on doing this, but it popped into my mind. It popped into my mind while you were talking. I remember several years into my career, I was sitting down with an executive and we had a really good conversation, and he looked at me at the end and said, where did you come from? How long have you worked here? And I said, 5 years or so. And he's like, well, how come I never knew about you before? And I said, well, it's because I report to Beth now, and she sent me to this meeting. Mm-hmm. And it was a meeting that was a pretty important meeting that as the leader, you could have been someone to say, you know what? I want to take this meeting with this executive. I want to make a good impact. But instead you said, hey, Laura, that's your person that, this information, you go meet with him. And that's what sponsorship and exposure is big. All about. Mm-hmm. And, that's something that I have learned from you. And it's becoming something that people are talking about more and more now. I think you were doing it before it was probably even had a name to it, but being able to send people, identifying what people's strengths are and then saying, you go do that meeting. I have confidence in you. I mean, think about what that told me as your employee of she trusts me to go meet with this person who was not the easiest personality to interact with. So I was nervous about how the meeting was going to go.
I didn't want to deal with them.
It works for that too. Yeah, there may have been a few times where I recall you saying that you're slightly older and
I get to pick what I do.
You get to pick because you're older.
I've said that to a lot of people. I'm older now, so I don't have to do that.
That would be another Beth Pratt mantra that I forgot about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, been there, done that.
That is too funny, but it's true. Yeah, it's true.
Oh my gosh. Well, as you think about we talked a little bit. I heard you mention Kim Scott and Brene Brown, which we both fangirl over them. Yeah. But are there other books, podcasts, articles, magazines, you name it, people that you follow.
Listening. First of all, I've been blessed to always have to travel for work. So I always put the podcast in and listen to audios. And I'm so mad when somebody calls me when I'm in the car because I just want to listen to my book. The most recent leadership book that I read, and you'll laugh about this because for the last 10 years, I kept saying, I want to have a book club. I want to have a book club. Yes. And everybody just rolled their eyes at me, and I wanted to do this book club. So I thought at my new startup company, I'm just going to have a book club.
Right.
And so for Christmas, I ordered for the people a book. It's called Bacon's book. John Bacon is the book, and it's called Let Them Lead. And I picked the book off the top 10 bestsellers, and I picked it because I thought, well, first of all, I'm into leadership books. You are too. Yeah. We love like Brene Brown and very specific leadership book. But if I could trick people into reading a leadership book, and this book is about a hockey team, a high school hockey team that was in like the bottom bracket of like thousands of hockey teams. And this guy came in, and he was an individual, this John Bacon, it was his book. He came in never scoring, he played hockey his entire life and never scored a goal. So he inherited it.
So he could empathize.
And it's really cute on how he kind of like brings it. Why would they hire me? I've been saying that every day, every job I've ever had. I don't know why people hire me. They couldn't find anyone else. But he talked about let them lead is about building a culture. And like culture is such a big word and everyone talks about culture, but do they really know what it means? And at the end of the day, how intentional you have to be with culture. So if you think about a startup, there's a lot of intention put on what the business plan is going to look like, what the building is going to look like, making sure that it's efficient. How much energy and effort are we going to use on building the culture? Right. Because you've got to be deliberate. Because at the end of the day, if you're not deliberate, a culture is going to form.
It will.
And it can form without your control. And Let Them Lead talks about how you actually bring this culture to life in such a disciplined, deliberate way that eventually you don't have to be the people that are managing that culture. Everyone else does it. So it eventually you lead as an individual. So no matter where you're on the team, first of all, you make it hard to get in. And once you get in, you're a part of something big. And that something big, we like literally push each other as opposed to being, top down. What I love about the startup is we are looking to empower people to the point that in some cases you're so empowered, you're like, well, can I make that decision? And they're like, yeah, you can make that decision. Are you sure? Like you check yourself, which is a good thing. Yeah. But if we're all checking each other, we're going to hopefully not make mistakes that we've made in the past or, new mistakes. And then really building that culture where people feel empowered and okay to make a mistake, but making sure that, there's discipline too. Like we've got to be disciplined about it.
No, but that's true because you're right. I mean, I remember we've worked with organizations where people will say, well, what is the culture? What is the culture? Yeah. And then they were waiting for someone to, one person to kind of come down and, explain what the culture is. And it's like, no. We all end up dictating the culture if there's not an intentional focus on defining what it is, explaining what it is, and then, giving people opportunities to live it out every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I like that. And it seemed like, and what I loved about it is it seemed like everybody read it. Everyone showed up for book club. We had a very, good interaction. But at the end of the day, your number one teaching leadership. You're tricking them because they think they're reading about hockey, but there's a little bit of, leadership in there. And then the second piece in my mind is we're all starting to read the same thing. So you're starting to establish a common understanding or like at least putting the framework around what leadership is. Yeah. And when you start to build that leadership language, all of a sudden it starts to intentionally form. And so there are things in the book that I wouldn't have done. And there are things that I thought, oh my God, what a great opportunity. But learning or hearing both of them. And like when we're in the office and somebody says, like the book. And I'm like, oh, this is going to work. So, some people hate it, but that's okay too. And I always say, you don't even have to read it. Just come and listen to the conversation.
Because really what you're doing is giving people a starting point to start talking about what is their definition of leadership and what are their expectations? Because I think so often, I'm sure every single one of those, did you say 15 people that are currently at Mountaintop, they probably all have their own expectations about how this is going to go and what the culture is going to be, whether they've actually stated those expectations or not. So being able to intentionally bring that group of people together to say, okay, let's talk about, you know, what those expectations are. What are you thinking it's going to be like here? Get it out on the table now and have a conversation about it. I think that's huge to be able to do that.
And I think, you know, as we think about building this out, it's about, in my mind, it's about everybody says, you know, it's not a fit. It's not a fit. You're not a fit. You're not a fit. I don't want to build the fit. I want to be more inclusive. I want to say, okay, like what can you bring to the table? What value add do you bring to the table? And, you know, making sure that we're not hiring a bunch of people that act just like each other, you know, because they fit. I don't allow anybody to say that anymore. I said it for years. Like, why aren't we going to hire this person? Because they're not a good fit. That's it's a terrible, like what we were doing, we're not being inclusive. And I didn't even know it.
Right.
Now it's about, okay, we're not going to hire them because they don't bring, you know, A, B, C, and T value to the table, and we need this value. You know, it's such a different conversation, and it really it pushes you to be a lot more intentional about why you're hiring someone, why you're not hiring someone. But it can't be about cultural fit. What I want to do, and I give this example, and we even talk about vacation. There are people in this world that take a vacation and want to go completely off the grid. And there are people in this world that it makes them nervous to take a vacation and go completely off the grid. So they want to still be on calls. They want to check their emails and blah, 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 blah. What we've got to get to is both sets of people are valuable. And we need to respect both sets of people. Now, everybody says they respect them, but if they go off the grid, we're rolling our eyes. I got to say, I've rolled my eyes at people that have gone off the grid. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that because they have a different way of managing. Right. That helps them to not, you know, be, you know, like burn out, you know, and there are some people that, oh my gosh, it makes you nervous. I might be one of those people that get nervous if I can't see what's going on.
Not me, I'm fine going off the grid.
That's why we get along so well. We're very different. But appreciating it and not just wink, wink, we appreciate it, we don't care, really not caring. So if somebody goes off the grid and somebody calls it, what am I going to do? I'm going to say, no, it's okay to go off the grid. That's the other thing about not being a bystander. Of mistakes that I've made in the past, I have been a bystander. And it was because probably I was young. I was trying to fit in, not making waves. So when I'd see an interaction or situation that was going on, I'd be like, oh, I hate this situation. And when I'd leave, I'd try to follow that person back that was impacted and talk to them and stuff like that. But having the courage to be, you know, an upstander, somebody that stands up for the situation in the right way in a very respectful manner, I'm going to get better at that if it kills me. But upstanding for people, you know, standing up for people matters to me now. And that takes courage and it takes wisdom and it takes years and a lot of confidence.
Yeah, but I have so much respect because you could very easily be at a point in your career where you're like, you know what? I'm set in my ways. I have established what my leadership brand is, and it is what it is. Take it or leave it. Don't care, you know. But you're standing here, even with all the experience that you do have from a leadership perspective, as someone who's been a leader, as someone who's coached leaders, taught leadership. But being able to stand here and still say, you know what? There's things that I want to get better about. I'm still evolving in my leadership brand. My leadership journey is not over. I'm still doing new things and different things.
Yeah. And I love that. And I don't know how. I have a tribe of people. You're on my tribe. And I say, when I get to that point, I want you to tell me to just go. Give me my honest criticism that you need to leave. It's time to call it a day. Because I don't know. And you and I talk about definition of potential over the years. It's learning agility in my mind. If you've got somebody that's willing to learn, you can teach people anything.
Yep, I agree.
And so
you can't force that. It is an internal wiring, whether someone has the motivation and the desire to learn and grow or not.
And either way is okay.
But
each path people's paths are different as a result of it.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours. Well, I do talk to you for hours and hours. But anything we haven't covered, maybe things that I didn't ask you that you were hoping that we would get to talk about today? I don't want to shortchange everyone on your leadership
nothing
experience.
Specifically from nothing comes to mind. I think that we've covered a lot. And, we laugh about there's so many, people hear the same thing, different things. There's so much out there to unpack. So I love that you're bringing this to the table. The other thing I have to say about, and here's me going to brag on you a little bit.
Oh, gosh.
What I love about this, and I heard you talk when you were talking to Jim on your first podcast about it, is I love the fact that you're focusing on the positive of leadership, because so often everybody goes to the bad leadership advice you've gotten, right? And this is, I'm never going to do this, or I'm never going to do that, because it's so easy to step outside and evaluate somebody leading you or leading others and talk about what they're bad at. That's easy. But really trying to focus and bringing to the table what people are good at. So I love the idea that you're focusing on the positive side of things. And it's so you, because I think about what you've brought to the table for me. And I know it was a lot about strength finders. And for years, I've worked on, okay, we're going to work on this. We're going to work on this. Like, this is what you're not good at, or this is what I'm not good at. We're going to focus on this. And you'd be like, no. I know what I'm good at, and I'm going to just do better at that. And really focusing on the strengths moving forward. You taught me that that's okay. I focus on all the things that I'm not good at and try to bring myself up to skill and be proficient at certain things, when in fact, maybe it's about taking what you're good at and amplifying that. And maybe that's how you push it forward. So I really appreciate the advice you've given me over the years on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really just because I knew I was a hopeless case on all those things I wasn't good at. So
look at you thriving now.
Trying to distract you.
You've always done you. It didn't matter if it was popular, not just do you. And I appreciate that.
Be you. Exactly. Thank you. All right. Well, we have to finish.
Sure.
Did you notice that I did the lightning round with Jim?
Oh, yeah.
So I got to do the lightning round here. We're going to close out. So how this works, I want to pull up my timer. You have 1 minute to answer as many questions as you can. So let's see if you can beat Jim and how many you get through.
Shoot. I should have paid attention.
Okay, ready? These are easy. You can do these. Okay. On your mark, get set, go. What season best fits your personality?
Spring.
That's what he said too. Okay. What's your most used emoji in text?
Smiley face.
What book, song, movie, podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
The Notebook.
The Notebook.
Hopeless romantic.
I love that. Okay. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
That I barrel raced.
Yes. And once you get to know her, then you'll realize it all makes sense. Okay. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on
shoes.
I knew you were going to say that. Same. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Oh, Jennifer Aniston.
Of course. That's a good answer. Okay. What is if you wrote a book, what would the title be? Stumped her on this one.
Oh my gosh. I know I have something really good too.
Timer went out. Okay. I feel like we're on The Price is Right.
Do-over.
That was
mulligan.
good.
Do-over. I don't know. Mulligan. My whole life's been a mulligan.
That's a good one. Okay. You better trademark that before someone else gets it.
Yeah.
All right. Beth Pratt, you are Grace and Elegance.
Thank you.
For
I
being
appreciate
here today.
it.
This was fun.
Yeah. I had a blast.
Thank you
It was
so
great.
much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have today. Thank you so much for being a part of Leadership Rediscovered, and we'll see you back next time. Shine bright, everyone.